shall we get started into this very amazing topic? And we shall hear Zara's sexy intro, which is going to make this sound amazing.
Sexy! Welcome back to the essential podcast that is 8-Bit Popcorn. This week's topics center around cancel culture, the infallibility of celebrity, and we are asking, can you truly separate the creator from the art being created? Joining me, as ever, are the enigmatic Joe O'Hagan.
Hello.
And the effervescent Ryan O'Neill.
Ooh, I like effervescent. Hello. That's a nice word.
Actually means youthful, and since you're really old, Ryan, maybe that's not.
It's a bit of a juxtaposition.
Youthful at heart.
Way to
I've been told I have silky
describe
smooth skin. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. Bad boy with silky smooth skin.
That sounded like sluggy. I got sluggy smooth skin, which actually reminds me. Sorry to get off topic already, but effervescent. I just learned it's a Twilight meme. Okay.
Ooh.
Because somebody posted, I bet, if Bella and Edward had smartphones like we do today, Edward would be like blowing up Bella's messages with like taking a picture of a snail and going, effervescent. And so now it's just become associated with Edward. Anytime you see effervescent under Twilight, it's the effervescent snail meme.
So we just need a picture of me and that meme side by side. I will research this later.
Effervescent.
Pop it up on the Instagram.
Yep.
So Zara, I think you're still on track to get your intro in one if you have to finish it, or is that finished?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Just it. Yeah, it ended with the introductions. I don't know. I had another sentence about.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but I crossed it out because I said behind the scenes. So I said using Roland Barthes' 1967 Death of the Author as a starting point was like one of the things I had written down, and then I was like, sorry, who are you? And then I took it out. So
who are
I
you?
just thought
Joe?
it sounded really stupid. Sorry,
philosophers.
Joe O'Neill. Is that who you are?
Yeah.
Did you
I don't
say
know. I just
Joe
thought it sounded
O'Neill?
a little bit weird.
Yeah. That's
You
because
didn't-
we
Wait.
got married last week.
Oh,
Wait,
yes.
it's
Yes.
because I had written down your names for the. I literally wrote down your names in the intro instead of just knowing what I was going to say. I was like, I'm going to write down the enigmatic Joe O'Hagan. Like I actually wrote it down fully instead of just being like, I can say that whenever it comes to that bit.
Cute.
So I was worried that I would just like say it wrong or whatever. So
The most difficult part, well, not the most difficult part, but one of the best parts of writing intros for this podcast is trying to find sexy ways to introduce each other. Like I find myself in work earlier sitting thinking about, I could say this and then that might be kind of funny. And it's like, no, work, do your job. Yeah. I'm fantasizing about this podcast in my free time, which is a good thing. I'm sure that's
it's a very good thing. Yeah. What else would you fantasize about? Come
Well,
on. Where do we want to start? Guys, this is a big topic.
Yeah. So you what was the things you mentioned? The infallibility of celebrity, cancel
Yeah.
culture, and death of the author. Well, tell me about the infallibility of celebrity. What do you mean by that?
So that was an idea that came from some of the articles that I was reading that came out after the Joss Whedon, Ray Fisher stuff. And it was basically how we view celebrity and people that work in entertainment as a society. And it kind of alluded to this idea that they are not held accountable in the same way that other industry professionals, I guess, are. And it was more like they can't mess up or make a mistake because, number one, we don't see them as people like us. And also because of the systems of power in place in like the film industry, the entertainment industry, in media in general, there's less accountability and like realism in just seeing them as people like you and I.
yes. So we don't see them as people. Is that what you're saying?
Right. That we don't hold them to the same standards.
Yeah.
That they are something else. They're other, and
They are
if
other than they are better than us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the way that they're. That's the way that they're viewed.
Yeah.
And
because they are.
but
Yeah.
right. But
I mean,
even
they
as
have
you're
more money
saying
than
that,
me,
like
so they're better than me.
there are right, but there's people who do think, oh, that celebrity is just incredible, and it's like, well, why? They're not any. I don't know. I don't know whether it's working with people in the public eye and having to just treat them like normal people, or maybe because we have that experience of knowing kind of the behind the scenes or knowing a bit more of the industry goings on.
Well,
But yeah,
looking at examples, like everyone's obviously very familiar with the whole Kevin Spacey thing. I know there's been a lot of cases prior to him and
mm-hmm.
since him. But I came across articles that were discussing, is it okay to enjoy his work? Maybe not necessarily just Kevin Spacey, but they were using him as an example. Is it okay to enjoy his work now, knowing what we know about him?
Well, there's that whole, like, Ridley Scott, like, erased him from All the Money in the World.
Yeah.
I researched that, and they filmed 400 new shots with Christopher Plummer over 9 days. And Ridley Scott said, he did. He just passed away. R.I.P.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott said it would have been a pity if the film were completely neglected because of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't say, I don't know. It just came across really strangely. It's not like we have to, because I think it was what Kevin Spacey had been accused of sexual assault at that point, and more details were coming out as kind of it progressed. But, there was no emphasis on how dangerous it would be to put him in his film and still release it. It was more like, oh, well, if we had done that, the film wouldn't have done as well.
Yeah.
And it just kind of...
Say they left Kevin Spacey in that movie, which was a bit of a shit movie anyway, but regardless.
Yeah.
Say they left him in that movie. There's an argument that it's not an endorsement of Kevin Spacey or his actions, but it's just watching and appreciating the art form of this film and the character. You're not revering Kevin Spacey, although there's another argument to say that he doesn't deserve then to be in the public eye and have all this public perception and wealth and fame that comes with him being in media. So
yeah, well, my thing is, I don't think there's anything wrong with personally enjoying the movies. I mean, if it's a good movie and...
Well, look at Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many movies that he's involved in.
You got Pulp Fiction, Good Will Hunting, Lord of the Rings, Gangs of New York. He's got so many films under his belt. Does that mean that necessarily you should not be allowed to enjoy his work, I suppose?
I don't really think that anybody's ever really saying that, that you can't enjoy the movie. I think it is more what you were touching on. They don't really need to be in the public eye anymore. And if there is discourse around a movie, say it's recently come out or it is coming out, then the discourse should be focused away from that person. And so that they don't sort of get the notoriety that they might otherwise get, and they should be discounted from any awards. And I think their careers, it depends on obviously what they've done, but at the same time, if we're talking about cancel culture, who has been cancelled that didn't deserve it? I mean, I can't think of anybody. I was trying to think of somebody last night, and then one of my friends said James Gunn, and I was like, actually, he wasn't cancelled because the studios tried to get rid of him because they wanted more creative control of the movie. And then people were going, excuse me, those were tweets from 10 years ago. People change, and he has changed significantly, and he wasn't cancelled. So
look at Jimmy Fallon. He was cancelled for
blackface.
Yes, for doing blackface and impersonation of Chris Rock in 2000 or around the early 2000s.
Well, he wasn't really cancelled. I mean, he just had a bit of backlash.
Well, is it even deserved for there to have been backlash for something that happened 20 years ago?
I think that he deserves backlash.
Change. What's considered humorous can change. Public perception can change. Just because it's maybe taboo now doesn't mean you should drag him through the dirt
for a while.
Oh yes, I'm not saying it's ever been okay.
But
I mean, why just now?
Well, because people are aware of it now. 20 years ago, I don't know, audiences seemed a bit more segmented. I mean, look at what happened to Shane Dawson recently. Have you heard about him?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he had a big thing. I mean, he has done blackface for years and impersonated different races. And he has had backlash throughout his career for this, and he never stopped. Whereas now, when people are a bit more au fait with political correctness and being more sensitive to cultural appropriation, et cetera, buzzwords, they now want creators to answer for what they've done. It's not just, you shouldn't be doing that, stop doing it. It's, why are you doing this? Why was there a pattern of behavior? And give us an explanation, give us a genuine apology, or GTFO,
That's very true, as you say, that answering for what has been created or what has been done before. Yeah. But yeah, I know what you're saying, Ryan, in terms of like, well, why is it not okay now? Or why is it like, I think it's really strange because none of us would sit here and say that we didn't tweet something that was a little bit stupid when we were like, in 2010.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like anyone is exempt
It's just because it's not as if he's doing blackface in the case of Jimmy Fallon in 2018.
No, but it doesn't mean it was okay.
No, I'm not saying it was okay, but I just don't think that it's something that necessarily they have to dig up and say, "Oh, you did this thing 20 years ago. Let's try to cancel you."
But I think it was just a bit of backlash. Jimmy Fallon did not get cancelled. And have you ever noticed that whenever people go, "Oh, cancel culture is so shit," it's usually because they're the ones that are saying shit things. I think cancel culture is a misnomer. Cancel culture does not exist. Accountability culture and saying stupid shit culture exists, and you gotta
that is cancel culture.
Consequences.
That's just one name for it. It's cancel culture. Like there's always been cancel culture, but we've just recently started naming it cancel culture.
Yeah.
But do you not think it's because we've reached a stage where nothing can be erased? I mean, if you do something, it's online and it's online forever.
Yeah.
Someone will have screenshot it before you delete it, and then it'll be shared around, and there's no way of tracing the genesis and completely deleting it. So accountability now is inevitable because you can't really hide from anything that's been put out there.
But even breach of privacy is now inevitable. Like there's, as you were saying, nothing is safe. Nothing can be deleted or wiped from the internet. Once it's out there, it's owned by the public or the world. And
then they have every right to question.
Well, that's it. What gives people the right to question, as you were saying, are celebrities like us are human beings. They have faults. What gives us the right to sit and criticize and scrutinize them to the nth degree? I
think because they're in a position where they can influence others. I think if you're mass media and you're on TV, or your opinions and your actions are going to be seen by a lot of people, I think you have.
But I don't think you're like
inherently a responsibility.
I nearly feel like the internet or the world, I suppose, they don't want people to have opinions anymore. Like there is so much talk around removal of free speech. The minute somebody says something that's even slightly sexist, racist, derogatory, or in different opinion, immediately then the whole idea of cancel culture gets flagged up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you just kind of said there was whenever people are racist, sexist, misogynistic, whatever it is, they're being kind of dicks. And if you're attacking somebody with your speech, whether implicitly or explicitly,
but somebody has a right these days
to come back at you and say, shut the fuck up.
Yes. But I feel like political correctness is, in my eyes, has just gone way over the top. You can't say anything without offending somebody. I don't think we'll ever achieve equality. I think it's impossible because everybody wants superiority. Like equality can never exist. You're always going to step on somebody's toes.
Well, I don't think so. I think equality can definitely exist, and really it's people who have more of an advantage. To say us, we're all white. Sorry if you wanted to have a parasocial relationship with person of color, Joe. But, we all have these privileges, white privilege, and we don't necessarily recognize the hardships that other people face. To say that, somebody come up to your level. Now, I know you're not saying this, Rand, but this is what people are sort of saying whenever they go, "Ooh, don't give people those rights. What's next? Cats and dogs getting married?" No. Just somebody having the same rights as you does not mean that you have less rights. It just means that you're on an equal playing field.
What I mean is,
and I know you weren't saying that, Rand. I know you weren't saying that.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is, yes, strive for equality by all means. But I feel like, say we were all having an argument and I said it was Zara. Yeah. Well, then I upset Joe. But if I side with Joe, I upset Zara. So I feel like no matter what side of the fence you're on or what kind of position you take, you're upsetting or pissing off someone. And I feel like people are always trying, especially celebrities, they're always trying to appease the public. They'll put something out and then all of a sudden they'll renege on it. Look at Vanessa Hudgens there that put out tweets about she was calling the whole coronavirus measures bullshit. Yes, and then she tried to do damage control by saying, "Oh no, that's not what I meant. Do stay at home, be safe." And it's like, no, you took a position, which a lot of people would agree with. I'm not saying I do, but a lot of people would agree with that or think that we don't know the full story or whatever. But I think that she took a position and then she saw that there was backlash from that. So then instantly tried to renege on that and then appease the masses. But then in doing so, pisses off people whereby she's changed position. If that makes sense.
The whole damage control thing is a big part of cancel culture, isn't it? And especially like YouTubers and people that issue those apology videos in inverted commas that are quite disingenuous and get a lot of backlash anyway. So then not only is the actual opinion or action that they've taken under scrutiny, but their actual apology for that then is completely disregarded because it just comes across as fake.
Yes. Yeah. But on the other side of the fence, like look at what was happening in The Mandalorian with Gina Carano. Disney essentially fired her. And yes, I know she was putting out tweets, or maybe, I don't know the full story there, whether she was refusing to support the BLM or she was kind of denying the seriousness of the whole COVID pandemic. And then there was something she was saying about right-wing conservatives. Being a right-wing conservative was like being a Jew during the Holocaust. And I get some that's very obviously controversial, but I get that she stood by her guns. She didn't try to do damage control after that. So either way, she was going to piss people off, I think. Because there's people that may agree with her and there's people going to be disagreeing with her. But I think that regardless, like, you can't appease everybody.
No. But I was just kind of saying earlier on that it is a pattern of behavior. You know, these people do not get cancelled willy-nilly. Gina Carano, you just mentioned her. I mean, she was advocating for
Pedro Pascal. He's been putting out a lot of like imagery or comments about kind of like, I think, the Holocaust and whatnot, and racism or whatever, sexism. Yes, like he's in the kind of firing line at the minute as well, be it on Twitter or Instagram. He'd be easy to replace. And he hasn't been replaced. He hasn't been, like, there's no backlash, there's no cancel, culture attack on him. It just seems to be kind of geared at Gina Carano, and you think, well, why one and not the other?
I haven't seen the Pedro Pascal one.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to research that.
Gonna have to, because as you say, why has it only been picked up with Gina?
Yeah, there's a few other Disney employees, be it writers or actors, that have also apparently, I don't know their names, but they've also been putting out tweets that are basically racism or sexism. I'm not quite sure, but they haven't been fired as well. So people are pointing out, well, why Gina Carano and not the others? Yeah,
that's interesting. Coming back to what you guys said about the kind of inequality of abuses of power, Jessica Chastain said a really interesting thing in one of those, the Hollywood Reporter Oscars Roundtable videos. And she said, when you have one demographic that's in charge of the livelihood of another, you will have abuses of power. So that kind of leads on to what Charisma Carpenter was saying in her statement about Joss Whedon, where she said she was having to, and I want to just check that I'm not ad-libbing this. She said that she was having to choose between whistleblowing and job security, as in if she was going to tell anyone about what was happening, she would probably lose her job. So it was like either tell the truth or keep quiet and keep working. And obviously at that time she was pregnant and she was, working and different things. So I just thought that was really interesting that it was such a black and white decision for her.
It was probably the same as the Harvey Weinstein situations, either sleep with me and get this job or don't get the job.
And don't work. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is kind of crazy. I mean, Hollywood's directors, it's not just Hollywood. I mean, just Hollywood is a very, very public thing. But studies have shown that it is just as prevalent in other industries as well, including like law, science, blah, blah. Science, when you think about it, is extraordinarily misogynistic. But it sees people in power, generally a white man, not always, but generally a white man, who has climbed the ladder and is now pulling it up behind him and asking people for fees or for favors to put the ladder down again and let them climb up. And then just probably pulling it out from under them again and just hanging this power over people's heads. And it has been women historically who've been obviously the victim of this, people of color, homosexual people, trans people, whatever it is. Anybody who isn't a straight white man is fucked in this industry, or in any industry for that matter. And Charisma Carpenter coming out about all the stuff that Joss Whedon had done. I mean, I didn't really like Joss Whedon anyway. I don't know whether I said it on this podcast, but I don't know whether I have actually, but I never really liked Joss Whedon. I didn't like the first Avengers very much, and I really didn't like Age of Ultron. I always found his dialogue very insipid. But one of my friends actually, very coincidentally, is on like a binge rewatch of Buffy and Angel, and all this stuff just came out during his binge watch of it. And he said that upon watching Angel, the seasons that Charisma Carpenter's in it, and then Joss Whedon stuff came out, and then he watched the episode where she came back, there was like a really bad taste in his mouth whenever he watched it again, because he was going, oh God, now I know what happened to Charisma Carpenter and all the shit that Joss Whedon said to her and said about her to other people and to her face. It's like, oh, I don't really know if I want to.
Right. That is really interesting. Yeah, I never liked Joss Whedon either. I don't know what it is. I remember everyone in uni loved Buffy, and I just didn't get it. I only really watched Buffy and Angel like last year was the first time I kind of watched through it. But yeah, that is interesting that it affected the way that your friend watched it with that context. I think, is that something that we, like, because we study film and we are interested in media, is it something that you can look at something years later with context, life experience, like mature understanding of society and the film industry, which we kind of know is predicated on valuing performance over the person? Is that kind of something that we're more aware of because of our work and our experiences?
Like, well, my example for that one would be, what do you call her? Shelley Duvall in The Shining.
Oh God, yeah.
I didn't know about her treatment on set whenever I watched it. I mean, The Shining, it's okay. I don't like hold it in like any kind of crazy high regard. But whenever I was researching the film afterwards and heard how Stanley Kubrick treated Shelley Duvall, like I had a really negative opinion of that film. All the takes that he made people do, psychological torture that he put her through. I mean, she developed stress-induced alopecia during that film.
My
and
goodness.
I was like, yeah, no, I'm not even really giving this film the time of day, and I'm not calling it a classic because I don't think it deserves to be called a classic because of all the shit that went into it. So, and I don't even think it's all that good either, but you know.
But would you think that history's ever really had any kind of great movies or books or paintings produced by people to do bad things?
Yeah, loads.
And can you
Lots and lots.
and can you admire that work? Not the person, but the work.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to. You can't go through life and say, I'm only going to watch films made by really good people or people who don't have any misogynistic or racist.
So
or
why is it then, Joe, you'd say that because of Josh Whedon, that's put a very bad taste in your mouth, say, for Buffy? You know, so like, you know, he's a bad man and you can enjoy some things by bad people, but not some other movies by other people.
Well, yeah, I mean,
like, why is it okay to enjoy maybe something from Harvey Weinstein and not Kevin Spacey?
well, yeah, I think it depends on the context that it's created in. I mean, if you say historically things have been created by bad people, and you go back further and further and further, and the shittier people become in terms of their views, and you're just kind of like, well, I have to kind of take it in context. You know, if somebody did an amazing piece of artwork or created a kind of revolutionary philosophical theory or scientific theory, but they were an asshole. Well, if they were in the 1800s, all men were assholes back then, you know? So, I mean, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. Whereas the likes of Joss Whedon, it's Kevin Spacey, right from the start, they were abusing their power. They knew they were abusing their power. They knew it was not acceptable to do these things. That's why they kept it a secret. Joss Whedon didn't treat other people like that on set. He took people into rooms and berated them privately. And the same with Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey didn't rape people in public. He did it in the bedroom and he molested them in the bedroom. They knew what they were doing was bad. Whereas, as I say, you know, somebody from the early 1900s, a scientist got it was like a Dewey Decimal, the Dewey Decimal System. He was a real asshole. He was a real misogynist, and he actually sexually assaulted people, like very, very openly. But of course, you know, you go, well, he created the Dewey Decimal System. He's why libraries exist in the way they do today. And it's not that you give them a pass, but you understand how society was at that time. And you're like, well, in terms of society, they were just kind of normal, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas what Kevin Spacey and Joss Whedon and blah, 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 Harvey Weinstein are doing is very abnormal and very, very harmful. And they know it is. They're knowingly harmful. So,
yeah,
but that's
a good way to
just
put
the way I see it. I'm not telling y'all how to think.
Well, do we know that Whedon was originally going to direct Wonder Woman before Patty Jenkins stepped in? Thank goodness.
Yeah. Patty Jenkins.
He had written a script.
Yeah. And Patty Jenkins had initially refused to direct Wonder Woman because she felt that DC were just using her as a token woman director. And then they came back to her. They were just going, no, you just direct our movie. I think it might have been Joss Whedon's script. I'm not too sure. And then whenever she went away and refused to work with them, then they came back and went, okay, you can do whatever you want. So that's when she went to direct Wonder Woman.
Apparently his his script was highly sexual and misogynistic.
I
Which,
can imagine.
just for Wonder Woman, really? Did he even think that to attempt that would work? I don't know. But thank goodness the
I
studio went
wonder
with
in what way did he
Jenkins.
try to sexualize Wonder Woman?
Boobs
I'm not
and
sure there was a
ass.
video.
Well, I mean, she already is wearing short skirt and, her boobs are pretty much.
It's all about framing.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Maybe it is
Yeah.
to do with the framing.
Well, even like some of the choices that he made in the Justice League, like having her like land on the Flash after, or the Flash lands on her, and they have this like weird awkward moment where
Mhm.
he's like, "Oh, I'm just this teenager that doesn't know anything, and I just landed on your boobs,"
Yeah.
And even like some of the weird dialogue choices that he had when he took over, just weird. I think now people seem even more excited to see Zack Snyder's cut
I'm
because
kind
they're
of looking
like,
forward to it.
I'm
Joss
a
Whedon.
little bit more excited for it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they can redeem it. What's our next topic?
What about because you were interested in it as well, Zara, the how our relationships have changed with something maybe we saw in the past, like Harry Potter or
Mm.
No.
I thought you might bring up Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, J.K.
Here
Rowling.
we go. Here we go, JK.
Here we go, J.K. You big fucking tough.
We're ready.
We're ready.
Yeah, I don't know. Harry Potter is a tricky one because I got into it quite late and it's become quite an obsession for me. So back in the day, I didn't really have any interest in it. And then I don't know, this whole thing of like retrospectively creating facets to a character, like saying, oh, by the way, like Dumbledore was gay. Did I mention that? It's like, really? Okay, because that's cool now. Like, why are we? I didn't really understand. I mean, representation wise, yes, have gay characters, but I don't know if it wasn't explicitly like at the time. Now I think she's just saying it for the sake of saying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't
I mean,
prevalent to the story.
It's like
We
saying,
talked
like,
about
I never
this a
said
few
that
episodes
Hermione
ago.
wasn't black whenever they had a black actor in one of their
Right.
Yeah.
What play was it they had?
The Cursed
The
Child.
cursed, yes,
Cursed
the cursed
Child,
child. Yeah, and people were in uproar because Hermione was black.
Yeah.
Who
We did kind of
cares?
touch on this
Yeah,
a few
exactly. Who
episodes ago,
cares?
which was about representation.
Right.
And I think we did use the Dumbledore. I don't know whether, but might have where he was gay, but there was nowhere in the text that ever suggested that he was gay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
None of his actions suggested that he was gay, and so she's representing people, in air quotes, without putting in the work. She's not writing him as gay. She's just going, "Oh, he's gay." And you're going, that's not representation, J.K. Rowling. Just the same way it's not representation to say that, oh, it doesn't matter that Hogwarts really focuses on Christmas because Jews get to explore Hanukkah at Hogwarts as well, even though it's never shown. I'm just
Never.
saying
Yeah.
that it is. And you're like, yeah, J.K., just sort of admit Harry Potter was written in a time period whenever it was kind of acceptable not to have representation, and so I didn't write it with representation. But if I did write it today, I would write representation into it. Maybe I'll put out a special short book with representation or some shit like that.
But it's
Yeah.
okay that it wasn't
Trying
written
to-
with representation back
It
then.
is-
Like, that is
it's
perfectly
absolutely
acceptable.
fine that something's not written with
Yes,
representation.
it would be
If
very
that's
different
not-
today.
Yeah, if that's not the point of it, that's not the point of it.
Yeah.
Everything
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a big
No.
social justice thing.
No.
But so stop trying to make it
Yes,
Mm.
but
retrospectively.
on that point, it feels
Yeah.
like everybody is trying to make every movie from now moving forward for the, the rest of time. Everything has to be inclusive of everybody and everything.
Well, I think particularly American media, it should be, because we live in a very homogenous society. In Ireland, most people are white. If you live in
Yeah, it's
Dublin,
true.
that's not really the case. There's more of diversity in Dublin, especially when you go to London. I see like a big uptick in diversity than I see here. But the default for so many years has been white person, and so it's news whenever somebody of Asian descent or of Middle Eastern descent or Black African American descent, whatever it is cast in something. And people are like, oh my God, ooh, how controversial that they're casting a Black woman as the lead in something. And you're like, it's not really. It's just because it's not a white man that you're kind of being like, wow, that's crazy. That's news. And
That's so
shouldn't really
true.
be news.
Yeah. I had
think
this
if they
conversation
just-
with someone
sorry.
recently. Sorry, Ryan.
Okay.
I had this.
We're doing that again. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, you go ahead, Zara. You speak.
No way. Should I? Okay.
Yes.
I will. I had
Just
I
take
had
it.
this conversation recently with a friend, and we were talking about Friends and the backlash that came kind of out. It was maybe a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, about the fact that there weren't a lot of black characters. I think there was only really one or two. I think Ross had a girlfriend
Yeah.
and so things like that. But they said to me, well, what's the problem with that? Because like that was made then.
Mm-hmm.
Does everything now have to include all these different things? And I said, well, it comes back down to representation. You're representing what is in society.
Yeah.
So were there no black people in New York in the 90s? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like we have to have all these different, we have to have a gay character, we have to have a, it's like you don't have to, but you're representing society. So there are gay people, there are black people, there are, women. So why aren't those things on screen and in these shows and
Yeah.
in these films? And you're showing a slice of society
But I get that
on
that's
these
us
shows
moving
or TV.
forward. I don't agree with, well, let's tear apart something from 15 years ago. Yes, I agree that yes, it maybe should have done a
Yeah.
better job at
Yeah.
representing, absolutely, but it didn't, and it is what it
There's
is.
a lot to learn from it, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's. I'm not even sure that they're tearing it apart. I think they're just kind of pointing it out and going, stop holding these things up as like beacons of media or as like great things of representation because Friends had like three
But they
women
are
as the main
beacons.
character.
It's only
yeah,
been torn apart because it's lacking representation. It doesn't make it bad.
Yeah.
It's
and so
Mhm.
maybe
not
they're
as
just
inclu-
going, let's move on from this type of media
Yes.
and start making new
Mhm.
types of media that do represent me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people would not feel seen by Friends. You think a black woman feels any kind of
Right, exactly.
yeah.
The people that are
kinship
saying
with
and
anybody
holding
in
it in such
Friends?
high esteem are the people who see themselves on screen.
Yeah.
And they're going, that was an absolute triumph of a TV show. Like,
Yeah.
I was such a Rachel. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but you think there's a little black girl watching that going, where are people like me in that show?
Mhm.
Yeah, or
know?
somebody who's gay watching the constant gay jokes about
Right.
Chandler and things. And for it being quite, and there's real transphobia in it as well. There's an episode where a man is, well, yes, Chandler's father is trans,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it's just played as
As a
ugh.
complete
It's played
comedy.
as
Yeah.
odd and yes,
Yeah, it's played
hilarious.
as odd. It's played as disgusting,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's never played as I accept you for who you are. It's I accept you in spite of who you are. You know.
Right. Yeah.
Does that mean though we aren't allowed to laugh at different people or cultures or make up something?
Not
Mm.
laugh
Do you know
at
what I
them.
mean?
I mean, it depends on who's making
Yeah.
the
You
joke
can
as
laugh.
well.
You can watch a comedy and you watch a comedy to laugh at the actors and the action that's happening on screen. Are we still allowed to do that?
Yes,
If it,
I
if
mean,
it was
it
a black
depends on-
person or somebody that
Yeah.
was, trans and we were laughing at their expense, which happens all the time to white men or white women, in films and comedy. But if we did one now in 2021 and we were laughing at the expense of a black person in a scene, is that evil?
Well, as it was kind of saying, the trans thing in Friends was played as odd for being trans.
Mhm.
It wasn't
Mm.
something that Chandler's dad or mother, as it were, was doing.
Yes.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. Fair
Mhm.
enough.
It was it
Yeah.
was funny because it was trans. It's
Mhm.
not funny because they're a funny character.
I know what you mean, Ryan, about you're saying, we laugh at white men and white women, but we're not
we don't.
laughing at them because they're white. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So if we're laughing at a black person and it's something to do with their race that
Yeah.
they can't change, it's
Mhm.
just how they are, then it just becomes sort of like, why is that funny? And why are we,
Yeah. Well, that's fair.
but I
Yes,
know that
that's
it's
fair.
been done in so many films and,
Mhm.
from, in our lifetime, things we saw when we were kids and, but yeah, it just becomes, it's one of those things where you have to think, how is that affecting someone else, or how is that coming across? Is that being disrespectful? Is it being, and it's a way bigger issue, and there's way more work to be done. But I think just from our own point of view, you know yourself if it's an uncomfortable kind of
Mhm.
situation, if you're kind of victimizing someone, or you're kind of not victimizing someone, but if you're pointing out something about somebody that they can't change, it's just who they are, and it's played for laughs. It is just a bit weird these days.
I do nearly feel as though if a movie were to come out say, I don't know why, but say another Indiana Jones movie came out. I know they didn't have Harrison Ford in it, but it was another white man. Is it wrong? Like, I kind of feel like that's something the media would just jump on and say, well, why is it not a woman, or why is it not a black man, or why is it not, another person of color? Why is it a white man?
I mean, Indiana Jones is canonically a white man, so.
Well, that's just an example.
Oh, I know, but
Yeah.
I know what you're kind of getting at. Yeah, but
Doctor Who has always been a white man, and now it's a white woman. Yeah, I don't know. It's I guess it's good to experiment with those kinds of things, see how studios react, see how audiences react.
And I know I'm throwing out a lot of negativity, or I'm just playing devil's advocate. Just for the discussion.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're doing. Yeah,
definitely. No, these are really.
Because there's going to be people, that are kind of on that side of the fence.
Should put a disclaimer at the start of the episode. Yeah. By the way.
Oh no, Joey's audio dropped out just as he was defending me.
Oh no.
See, that was an omen.
It was an omen, yes.
I tried to defend you and it just...
It wasn't allowed.
No. Yeah, I can't defend myself. I can't edit myself out.
Although Jodie Whittaker did get big backlash for that, but at the same time, everybody could tell that was cynically done whenever the Doctor changed into a woman, because you're like, yeah, I can see what.
Did that really matter though? Like, I don't watch Doctor Who
because it was kind of a shit show anyway.
He's always changing form from.
Yeah, that's so true. So why couldn't he be?
Yeah, like I never really saw any issue with that. I don't watch Doctor Who. I don't really like Doctor Who. But I never really saw any issue with.
No.
Well, it's just a change of form. Like, does it really matter?
I never saw any issue with it either. I just think that it
as long as the character's written well,
that the BBC did it very cynically.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I watched the first few episodes and I was like, oh, no, this isn't any improved from the last season, so I'm not going to watch it now. Just because Jodie Whittaker's the Doctor.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people might take that as people not watching it because she's a woman, because they've transformed from male to female. I think that show was going downhill a long time ago anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
as long as it's consistently shit, whether it's a man or a woman, I feel exonerated there. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, corporations do use the woke defense to defend bad products as well, because The Last Jedi was poo-poo for caca. And they said that anybody that didn't like it was racist and misogynistic. And you're like,
well, that was total bullshit. Yeah.
That was absolutely
it's coming
bullshit.
back to that thing of like, you didn't like that film, or you didn't like Marvel, or is that because you're a misogynist?
Exactly.
It's like, no, it's because it was either a bad actor or a bad
that's a really bad Star Wars movie.
You're going to annoy somebody. If I agreed and said it was the best Star Wars yet, you're pissing off hardcore Star Wars fans. But if I said what was a shit movie, then it's because I'm misogynistic and I'm racist.
Yeah, but you have to realize the difference between the people who just want to be offended for some reason and the people who are genuinely defending their...
political correctness has gone too far, and I think there's a lot of people out there that just love to have a go. They just love to be triggered.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
that was a big buzzword.
Triggered?
Yeah, it was a big buzzword,
Yeah, people were loving that.
I think the people who are most offended are not the ones it's not the minorities who are, constantly vilified in the media. It's the people who are like on the other side of the fence that are like, how dare you ask for representation? How dare you ask for rights? You want a black woman to be in the lead of a movie? What the fuck?
Yeah,
no,
totally.
They constantly talk about snowflake culture. Oh, look at these liberal snowflakes, and you're like, girl, anytime that any progress is trying to be made in society, you're out there in the streets crying and trying to commit an insurrection. You're trying to do an insurrection. Stop it.
That is very true. Yeah,
I know.
Joe just drops the mic.
White people.
Love that. Done it. Said it.
Done it. Said it.
But it's so true.
Alt-right.
It's the people who are in power that then think they have the right to be really offended if anything goes against their power.
You don't like me oppressing you?
Right. But they're the ones that are creating those conditions. Yeah. You can't question it. It's always been like this. You want it to change? What? Yeah. Why would you want that?
It's in the American Constitution that black people are only 3/5 of the person. So, Yeah,
it's written. It's written down.
It is actually written in the Constitution. You're like, oh, girl, your country is constitutionally racist.
Totally, yeah. So much needs to change. I think bringing it back to film, though, like the idea of subjectivity too, because like we can sit here and be like, it's right if this happens, it's wrong if this happens. There's offense to be caused, or there's institutional things at play that just don't that just can't work anymore. But like the subjectivity of film in terms of audiences and in terms of us asking if you can separate art from artist, the audience is always going to read the film in whatever way they choose, and most of the time it'll be completely independent of context of how it was created. So there's kind of a real ignorance in a way to
from actually the line. Sorry, go ahead.
Industry.
I just started cutting you off.
No, that's literally just that was all I wanted to say.
The last line in the book of Death of the Author ends with the line, "The birth of the reader must be ransomed by the death of the author." So they're saying that you should be distancing yourself from the author, and like they don't own sovereignty over the words, and that belong to you, that like the reader or the viewer. It's open to us to interpret them how we want.
I mean, that is the whole philosophy of Death of the Author, is just the piece of art is, once it gets into the hands of people, they read whatever they want to read into it, and it becomes a completely separate entity to them. What do you call the guy who wrote Death of the Author again, Zara?
Roland Barthes.
Roland Barthes. I think he used it was either him or Foucault, I'm not too sure, used the example of Shakespeare. And it was, you can read Macbeth in the context that it was written, as in like King James was a great patron of the arts, he funded Shakespeare, blah, 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 blah. Or you can read it just as a piece of art itself and do all your interpretations, which we often do today whenever we do English literature or media theory. We're kind of taught the death of the author with a bit of context, with a bit of biographical context to sort of inform why certain things were written. Or like F. Scott Fitzgerald, whenever you're reading The Great Gatsby, whenever he's describing the Jewish banker or gangster guy, you learn why he's describing him the way he is, because it's a pretty anti-Semitic description. And so you learn about the context. And Death of the Author is quite useful for sort of separating that and doing a sociological analysis. So there you go, listener. You learned something.
We're putting you through school.
Yeah. You getting a master's degree just by listening to me.
Sometimes when you put that little kind of accent on and that little voice, I think of like something from Looney Tunes, like Porky Pig or something.
And I'm like, hey, I know I just said something that's slightly intellectual. Don't take me seriously, though. I'm not a serious person.
Yeah, we feel like we have to backtrack.
I am now building a wall between you and me so that I can never be hurt by one of your comments.
That's right.
It's a defense mechanism.
Well, we've only had good comments so far, I think. Good things, all fed through Zara.
Oh.
And the other topics?
Yes, I was trying to look for the YouTube channel there. There's a girl called Sarah Z, or Sarah Z, if you're funky. And she did a video on, everyone is into Twilight again. Let's talk about Twilight. Yeah. And I just wanted to make the wee comparison because she makes it, and I thought it was quite a good one. Who would have thought that 10 years ago, the most problematic author between Harry Potter and Twilight would have been J.K. Rowling and not Stephanie Meyer, who, by reading Twilight, you can read a lot of Mormon stuff into it, and Mormonism is kind of fucked if I'm kind of right in saying it. But anyway, so who would have thought that by this time it would have been J.K. Rowling would have been the more problematic of the authors? And it's not because their views are like any kind of far apart in terms of how cray-cray they are. It's because J.K. Rowling won't shut up. She won't let the author die, whereas Stephanie Meyer doesn't tweet. She doesn't constantly put her views out there, and so people can now separate Twilight from the author and sort of allow it to be its own thing, whereas Harry Potter is so intrinsically linked to J.K. Rowling now because she won't let it die. So there's Death of the Author in action, if you ever did see it.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Another mic drop.
That was like a perfect summing up. That was like the perfect way to end that episode.
It's a very deep topic.
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic to talk about.
It is a very difficult topic to discuss.
It's very like politics, but
I know it is. There's so many, and then there's so many offshoots as well.
Yeah.
Like it is interesting because I've never
Yeah.
heard really of Death of the Author. And I almost, I did a little bit of research into it, but I didn't want to research into it a little bit because I kind of wanted Joe to wow me, which I knew he would. And of course he did.
And he did.
Yeah. Hit the ball out of the park every time.
Yeah.
That was heavy. I feel like we all need to watch a comedy film or something.
Decompress. Yeah.
Like de-stress from
I
it.
need a bath.
A nice
Bubbles.
relaxing bath.
Yes, bubble baths. I haven't had a bath in, I don't know, like 15 years, maybe more.
I don't have a bath.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I'll just
I don't
leave it
have a
at
bath
that.
either, yeah.
I prefer
Just
a shower.
hotel rooms. If I'm in a hotel, I'll have a bath, but that's about
No.
it. It's not really
You're
sad.
just sitting stewing in your own filth. Like a
I
shower.
know.
I can
Well,
stand.
you would be, Ryan. I'd be
I
really
would.
clean.
I'm a dirty
so-
pig. Yeah, I'm out in slurry.
Well, that's
Oh, we
true
need
because you
to-
would need a bath.
Yeah.
We need to do an outro for the episode.
Oh God, yeah, we do. Imagine if we
I'm
just
sure
ended it with Joe saying,
I'm sure Zara has a very well worded, scripted outro.
"I have
For us.
written nothing." But let me have a think. What did we talk about?
Death of the author, celebrity, infallibility, representation.
What do we? How do we sum that up?
So, listener, I hope you feel represented by what was said today.
If you felt left out, please try and cancel us. Try.
Yeah, maybe I'll say don't cancel us.
Yeah, don't cancel us.
Hashtag no cancelling.
See, you write the intro, but you don't think about writing the outro.
I didn't write an outro. What's
No,
wrong with me?
Unprepared.
Well, guys, that's about all we have time for. Thank you so much for listening. That was a big episode. So we hope you enjoyed. And please don't cancel us.
Don't cancel us before we start.
Follow, follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Make sure to comment. Give us engagement.
Comment,
Joe
like,
needs those feet
subscribe.
videos or feet pictures.
Well, you
Send
can see
feet pics
videos
to
as well
Joe.
as if you want.
Hey, all the
Hey.
different medias.
Social capital.
I feel like I can't remember an episode where Joe hasn't said something like social capitalism. It's like the staple
That's
of our
because that's
episodes.
Joe's thing.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
his thing.
Socialism, capitalism, materialism, all the
Yeah.
isms.
All the
All the
isms.
isms.
Joe-isms from now on.